There we go. Right. Good morning. Good Chodesh. And we are already in Chodesh Nisan. So from Rosh Chodesh Nisan, you're allowed to mention the P word in my house. Before that, you're not allowed to mention the P word, but you can mention the P word. 2 weeks today is Pesach. And I will be sending out a little message and an article that I haven't yet written, but I'm going to write about the history of Kimcha de Pischa later on today. That's going to be my contribution to Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and we'll see what that brings. Right, we are in Shmuel Bet. We're going to start chapter 4 today.
Sorry,
just
before you do that.
Yes.
Sorry, you mentioned two words there, Timcher, and I didn't catch it.
Kimcha de Pischa.
I've heard it before. What does it mean? Something about opening mouth?
No, it's Aramaic, and kimcha is the Aramaic word for kemach.
Oh, flour.
Flour. And pischa is the Aramaic word for Pesach. So kimcha de pischa is the annual collection of money for buying flour, wine, and other requirements for Pesach for those who are less fortunate than us. And it goes back thousands of years, this idea of Kimcha de Pischa. And I'm going to write an article today about it, and then you'll be able to read all about it.
Thank you.
But it's a tradition which has been going on in every community for many, many centuries. That, of course, Pesach is an expensive chag, and many people can't afford it. So those who can help out, and that's called Kimchet Pischa, and I'll tell you all about it later on today, I hope. Right. So chapter 4 of Shmuel Bet, and we need to just recap and see what happened in chapter 3. So we've got the context really. So before I put chapter 4 on the screen, we'll just summarize chapter 3. You will recall that Avner, who was the general of Ishboshet. Ishboshet was the son of Shaul, who reigned for a short period after Shaul. After Shaul was killed in battle, he was the only remaining son after the others were killed with him. So Ishboshet was the king, but we said very clearly that he was a very weak king, and actually the power lay really with Avner, who was the chief of staff. Avner decided to cross over camps and to join David, which would have enabled David to do what he wanted to do, which was to unite the people. David was, as it were, king of Yehudah, king of the tribe of Yehudah, reigning from Hebron, but he wasn't yet king of all Israel. And the idea was that he would unite the people in a bloodless coup. That was the idea. But it didn't happen that way. Avner came over to David and said, I can deliver this to you. I'm basically running the show over there in Ishboshet's kingdom of Binyamin. And I'll go over there and I'll deliver the people to you. They'll come and follow me, and all will be good, and you will be the king of all Israel. The only problem was that David's chief of staff, whose name was Yoav, had other ideas. He didn't trust Avner, and he said to David, you're being duped. He's a Trojan horse. And Yoav took it upon himself to go and kill Avner. He duped him into coming back to Hebron, and he killed him. David then's got a bit of sorrow on his hands, because far from now being able to unite the people, this was a very divisive act for which David would have been given the blame, because Yoav was David's chief of staff. Nobody was going to believe that David was not responsible for Joab's actions. It wasn't a situation like Ishbosheth, where David was very weak and he relied on Joab, which is true to a degree. He did rely on Joab, but it wasn't as so obvious like with Ishbosheth and Avner. So David then had to work very hard, if you remember, to persuade the people. In other words, to persuade Ishbosheth's people, to persuade the people of Binyamin that he, David, had nothing to do with the death of Avner. And he did that by going over the top with his mourning. And he mourned for him, and he cursed the house of Joab. And the last shiur that we had, we went through all those curses that David gave to Joab, and we saw how eventually those curses all came back onto David's family. Remember that? Yeah, that's where we ended last time. So the mitziut, the actual situation on the ground is this. Ishbosheth is up in further north in the territory of Binyamin as a very weak ruler. He's now lost Avner. David is further south in Hebron. And he's worked very hard to make sure that the people don't think it was him that killed Avner, and he was successful in that. And now he's going to have to wait a significant period of time to unite the people. Had this not happened, this would have happened very quickly. Avner would have delivered the Binyamin people into David's control, and all would have been good. But now that's all gone to pot. And we're taking now in chapter 4, we're going off at a bit of a tangent, because the question that chapter 4 addresses is, what about Ishbosheth? What about Ishbosheth? What happens to him now that he doesn't have Avner? Michael Krauss has just told us what happens to him, but let's hear it in some detail of what happens to Ishbosheth, the son of Saul. Let's share the screen and start the chapter. There we go. Right, here we go. Vayishma ben Shaul. And the son of Shaul heard. First question. Who are we talking about?
Ishbosheth.
Ishbosheth. Well, why doesn't it say so then?
Good question.
Why does it say Ben Shaul? It's true, he is a Ben Shaul, but what is the author trying to tell us by using the expression Ben Shaul as opposed to Vayishma Hamelech Ishbosheth?
Maybe Ishbosheth wasn't his given name. It was only the name given by the Tanach.
Okay, that is possibly true. I think we went through that in some detail, didn't we, some weeks ago? We're very familiar with that technique of Tanach, where it gives people names connected to what they do in their life. So we see that quite often, don't we? Whatever happens to them, they have as it were, a nom de guerre as opposed to their real name. So okay, that could be it could be that that's not his real name.
Is it because Ishbosheth is so weak that the author doesn't want to give him any credit for being the king?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's absolutely right. It's a derogatory term, right? This is not, by the way, the case in modern Israel, but certainly in England. If I refer to you as Lipowitz, right, as opposed to Mr. Lipowitz or Leslie, it's not nice. It's a bit rude, isn't it? Right? Lipowitz said this. Lipowitz did that. It's a bit rude, rather than saying Mr. Leslie Lipowitz, ACA or whatever you are, said this, that, and the other. It's a derogatory term, and that's what the Tanakh is doing here. I think you're right, Leslie. Ben Shaul he's so weak, this Ishbosheth, he doesn't even have a name. He's just the son of Shaul, and the only reason he's the king is because he's the son of Shaul, not because he deserves to be king or he has any qualities which would make it satisfactory that he should be king. So Vayishma ben Shaul, Shaul, the son of Shaul, heard. What did he hear? Ki met Avner bechevron, that Avner had died in Hebron. Now that's another interesting expression. What had happened to Avner?
He was murdered.
He was murdered. Now, we all get a bit hot under the collar, don't we, when we read the news on the BBC, when they say that Palestinians are killed, but Israelis die, right? There's a subtle, there is a very subtle linguistic difference, and it's used very commonly by people who are clever with their words to almost subliminally give a message. So if I was writing this, but given that I'm not the author of Tanach, it's not likely that I would have done. But let's say I was the author of Tanach, I would have written, Vayishma Hamelech Ish Boshet Ki Hargu et Avner bechevron. And King Ishbosheth heard that they killed Avner in Hebron. That would be a much more accurate statement than Vayishma ben Shaul ki met Avner bechevron. He died. What happened to him? He had a heart attack, fell over, banged his head. No, he was murdered. He was murdered. So again, I think this is Tanakh is using a language to describe the weakness of Ishbosheth, because Ishbosheth doesn't want to even consider that this terrible thing has happened to Avner. And look what happens next. Vayirpu yadav. Translated here, and his hands became feeble. Michael Krauss, what does the Living Nach say, please?
He lost heart.
He lost heart. Now that's interesting. Don't see any heart there. I'll tell you what the Koren.
Times Out says, by the way, his hands slackened.
Yeah.
Hands slackened. Okay. I'll tell you what the Koren says. Anybody got an art scroll, first of all? No? Our art scroll man, Jeffrey's not here. I think he's still in England. Okay, I don't know what the art scroll says. Actually, I do know what the art scroll says. I think I've got an art scroll here.
I've got it. And he despaired.
And he despaired. Okay. Now, all of those are interesting translations, but listen to this in the Koren. I think this Koren is got it spot on. He says, when Shaul's son heard that Avner had died in Hebron, he lost his grip. He lost his grip. I think that's a great expression, because what does their words mean? The words mean Vayirpu yadav. His hands
Relaxed.
became weakened. Yes, relaxed, became weakened.
Yeah.
Now,
but that implies he had a grip before, which he didn't.
Excellent question, Paul. Excellent question. Excellent question. I'm glad you asked that. We'll come back to it in a moment. We'll come back to it in a moment. But before we answer that question, which I will, because it's a very good question, where do we have this word vayirpu? To be weak. Anyone? David Marks will know this. David?
No.
Yes, you do.
Was it Leah's weak eyes? Did she have weak eyes, Leah?
She did. I don't think that's the word.
Say that again, Paul.
Leah had weak eyes.
No, I don't think they were rach. They were rach. They were tender.
All right.
Here we are in Parshat B'Shalach. Okay. Vayisu kol adat b'nei Yisrael mimidbar sin, and the entire community of the children of Israel journeyed from the midbar of sin, lemasehem, according to their travels, al pi Hashem, according to the word of Hashem. Vayachanu birfidim. See that? Vayachanu birfidim. And they encamped in Refidim. Refidim. Ve'ein mayim lishtot ha'am. And there was no water. Vayarev ha'am im Moshe. And the people quarreled with Moshe. Vayomru. And they said, Tanu lanu mayim v'nishteh. Give us water and we will drink. Okay. Now, what do the Mefarshim say about this name Refidim? You know it now, don't you, David?
Yeah.
Come on, tell us what the Mefarshim say.
They were weak.
They were weak in their connection to the Torah.
Yeah.
They just had the Kriyat Yamsuf, right? They just had Kriyat Yamsuf, and you'd have thought, wouldn't you, after Kriyat Yamsuf, that they would be incredibly strong in their emunah, in their belief and their connection to Hashem, because we learn, don't we, in about Kriyat Yamsuf, that the lowliest maidservant saw greater visions than Yechezkel even, and so they were on a very, very high level of connection with God, and yet 3 days later they're moaning about water. And so the Mefarshim say, I actually thought it was Rashi, but when I looked it up, it isn't Rashi. Rashi doesn't say anything on it there. So I don't know. I can't remember, because I only looked at this morning. I can't remember which of the Mefarshim say this, but I remember learning it as a small child, that Refidim comes from the word to be weak, and that their faith in Hashem weakened so quickly within 3 days that they started to complain about lack of water. So there's a Torah connection to the word Refidim, to be weak. Let's go back to Shmuel Bet, sorry. Vayirpu Yadav, and his hands became weak. And V'chol Yisrael nivhalu, and all of Israel were dismayed. Okay, now we'll answer Paul's question now, and then we'll come back to V'chol Yisrael nivhalu. So I really like that translation. He lost his grip. We use that in a modern expression as well, don't you? You know, if you lose grip on something, then you've lost control. It implies that you had power and you've lost power. You know, if you lose your grip on the party, then it's no good. You haven't got control over your members. So Paul's question was, hang on a minute, he was weak already. If he's weak already, why is he only now weak when he hears that Avner has died? Because the question is twofold, really. The question is, he was weak to start with, and then when Avner left him, remember they had a row. Avner didn't just sneak off and decide to go to David. Let's have a look. Let's go back and see. Here, chapter 3, verse 7. Now Saul had a concubine whose name was Ritzpah, the daughter of Aiah. And he said to Avner, why did you go into my father's concubine? Who said that to him? Not Shaul, because Shaul's dead. Who said to Avner, why have you taken my father's concubine?
Ishboshet.
Ishboshet. Now here's another example. Here, doesn't even get his name. He said to Avner, right? We talked about this when we did it. So Ishboshet's a non-person according to Tanach, really. So he said, why did you go to my father's concubine? And Avner became very angry at the words of Ishboshet. And he said, I am the head of the dogs which belong to Judah. Am I the head of the dogs belong to Judah? Why are you talking to me like that? Anyway, they had a big row. And then Avner by verse 12. Avner's decided he's finished with Ishbosheth and he's going off to David. So it wasn't, we go back to chapter 4 now. It wasn't as if Ishbosheth had only lost Avner when he got killed, when he died. He'd already lost him already because he had crossed the floor to David. So Vayishma ben Shaul ki barach Avner. And Shaul heard that Avner had run off to David and he felt he's lost his grip. That I could understand because the only grip that he had was via Avner. But now, why does it wait until he's dead, do you think, before we're told that he lost his grip? Or he felt that he'd lost his grip? Any suggestions?
I think that's why my version says he lost heart. He was weak before, but he had support, and once he'd lost his support, he lost heart. Although it's the actual translation.
Yeah, no, that's fair. It's the translation you've got is the meaning, which is what the Living Tanach does. It's exactly what it does. It doesn't translate it literally. It gives us the meaning, and that's very good. And you're right, but the question remains, why did he only lose heart when he was killed and not when he left to join David?
Maybe he was hoping he would come back.
Exactly. Once he's dead, that's it. There's no chance. He was hoping that he would come back. He was hoping he'd get to David. David would say, get lost. I'm not interested in you. In fact, if he'd have listened to Yoav, that's what he would have done, wouldn't he? He'd have said, get lost. And he was hoping Ishbosheth was like the what's the word I'm looking for? The abandoned wife, right? Or the abandoned husband. He's hoping that the other spouse will come back and go off and have his fling with David and then come back to him. But once he heard that he was dead, that was it. And I think that explains why it says Ki met Avner. Didn't make any difference to him whether he died naturally or he died at the hands of a murderer. As far as he was concerned, the fact was he was dead, and therefore no chance that he's going to come back and run his army for him. And therefore he lost heart. So he lost heart. So we can read Vayirpu Yadav, he lost heart. And then, having lost heart, he lost his grip. He's lost his grip, and presumably the other folk around him, they knew the score, didn't they? They'd have known that he was a weak king. They'd have known that his power was vested entirely in Avner. And so, when the people heard that Avner had been killed, what happened to them? What happened to the people? V'chol Yisrael nivhalu. They were all dismayed. Where have you heard that word before? Nivhalu.
In the Haggadah. Not the Haggadah, in Megillah Esther.
Where?
In Megillah Esther, when the people of Shushan were. Is that not right?
Shushan.
No, Sahalav. No, not Sahalav.
Tzalav Samecha. That was afterwards.
No. Then it's not. Then it's.
I don't think it's in. Correct me if I'm wrong, somebody, but I don't think it's in Megillah Esther. But it is in something that you've said today. Well, you might not have said it, Barbara, but Paul will have said it.
In the Hallel.
You? How dare you?
No. Only because only because women are not obliged to say it's a mitzvah, which is as man groma. You don't have to daven. Women don't have to daven in the morning.
You're still assuming, aren't you?
I said you may not. I said you didn't say you didn't. Chas v'chalila. Okay, let me ask you this question, Barbara. Did you say davening this morning?
Actually, I did, yes.
Okay, well then you may well have said it then.
Moshe.
Yes, very good,
Yeah.
Leslie. It's in the Shira. Now, did you say the Shira this morning, Barbara?
Actually, yes, I did.
Well, there you are then. Why didn't you remember it?
My
You are-
bad. My bad.
Okay, well, I nearly got myself into big trouble there, didn't I?
No offense taken at all.
None intended, none intended. Okay, so yes, it's in the Shira. Well done, Leslie. Who were Nivhalu? The Egyptians, when they got drowned, they were Nivhalu. They were dismayed. They were all at 6s and 7s, I think we would say in England. I don't think that is probably a very old-fashioned expression, that, isn't it? I don't think any of your children or grandchildren ever said to you 6s and 7s. I bet not.
Not in a Brit.
No.
Isn't it afterwards that all the nations were Nivalu?
Yeah, the nations were all dismayed. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the word. And here, Israel is Nivhalu. Israel is dismayed. Why are they dismayed? Because they're left with this useless Boshet and no general to help them. So what do you do when you have a weak king and you are dismayed? Come on, Michael, tell us. Yeah, you kill him. You kill the leader, and that's what they did. Second verse. Ushnei anashim sarei gedudim hayu. There were two men who were the head of the gedudim. That's a word used in modern Hebrew. I can see quite a number of people on this Zoom here who have children in the army or grandchildren in the army. And they will tell you what gedud they are in. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, somebody. Peter, you might know this better than me. I think a gedud is a brigade, is it not? Or a battalion? No, it's not a battalion, I don't think.
I've got a son who's a mefaked gedud, but I don't know how many people, something like 300 soldiers or something.
Yeah, a gedud's big. A gedud's a big, it's a big group. You've got your kita, and then you've got your, I can't remember. I used to know this when my kids were in the army, but gedud is a unit. I think gedud might be a unit. Anyway, whatever it is, it's a large group of soldiers. And these two guys were officers. They were the heads, sarei, the princes, literally. They were the heads of the gedudim. Ben Shaul, sorry, Shnei Anashim, Shnei Sarei Gdudim Hayu Ben Shaul. They were Hayu Ben Shaul. That should be Hayu Le Ben Shaul. Ben Shaul, again, not using his full name, had these two senior officers. Let's describe them as that. Senior officers. Shem Ha'echad Ba'ana. One was called Ba'ana. And the other one, Shem HaSheni, and the second one was called Rechav. Rechav. What does that sound like to you?
Rachav.
Yeah, and what's the difference? If you were Taimani, or if you were Ruby Stepansky, you would not make that mistake and think that they were the same. Because Rachav, as in Joshua's woman, the prostitute in the walls of thingy, Rachav is spelt with a het, and this is spelt with a chaf. That's a difference. So it's only because we don't know how to pronounce things properly that they sound similar. So they're called Rechav. Now, I wonder why it's called Rechav. Anybody want to hazard a guess why this chap's called Rechav?
It was broad. It was very.
That's also with a chet, Peter.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry.
Maybe Rachav was broad. Maybe Rachav.
Well, Rach is soft, and he was soft.
No, Rach is with a chaf. That's true. What's a rechev?
Car.
A car. That's right. And in biblical Hebrew, a rechev is a
Chariot or
chariot. So maybe he was head of the charioteers. He's called Rechav. I suspect that he was head of the charioteers. Ba'ana, I don't know why he's called Ba'ana. I'm only guessing that Rechav was head of the charioteers because of his name. Now, Bnei Rimon. They were the sons of Rimon. So it looks like they were brothers. Rimon. What does Rimon mean?
pomegranate.
A pomegranate or?
A bomb. A
Grenade.
grenade.
A grenade. Yeah, grenade. Yeah. Anyway, I don't think it means they were sons of a grenade. I think that that was the guy's name, Rimon. They were the sons of Rimon. And where was he from, this Rimon? Ha Be'eroti. He's from a place called Be'erot. What does Be'erot mean?
Wells.
Wells, yeah. Now, Mibnei Binyamin. Be'erot, of the sons of Binyamin. And then we have this very strange end of the pasuk. Ki gam be'erot techashev al Binyamin. On the screen it says, for Be'erot was also counted to Benjamin. What's going on here? What does that mean?
It's included in the territory of Benjamin.
All right, it was in the territory of Be'erot, was in the territory of Benjamin. That's what it's telling you. But why is it telling you that Be'erot is in the territory of Benjamin?
Were they loyal? Were they loyal to Saul? Saul was a Benjaminite.
He was. So you're saying that these people came from Be'erot, and Be'erot was loyal to Saul because it was
surmising.
Yeah. That's your supposition, right?
It might have been a marriage to somebody outside Benjamin, so therefore they were loyal to Benjamin because one of the parents was from Benjamin, the other wasn't.
But here it's talking about the place. Be'erot was also counted to Benjamin. The fact that the Tanach goes out of its way to say that this place was considered as part of Benjamin's territory implies that there would be a position to think that it wasn't. Otherwise, why mention it, right? It's considered counted to Benjamin. You don't find where it says Hebron. Oh, and by the way, Hebron was counted to Yehuda. We know that. So there's something going on here. And in order to understand what's going on here, you will see actually that when we come to the end of this, Barbara's supposition is actually 180 degrees wrong. And actually, these people were the opposite of supportive of Shaul. And you'll see why shortly. So I don't expect you to know this, but if you do, I'll be dead impressed. Where have you heard the name Be'erot before? You don't know. No, of course you don't know, because it's mentioned almost in passing in Sefer Yehoshua with a story that you will remember. The story of the Gibeonites, the Givonim. You remember the story of the Givonim, yes? I'm sure you do. Come on, Michael, you're having a little nod there. Tell us what you remember about the story of Joshua and the Givonim, the Gibeonites.
The Gibeonites pretended they were from very far away and had gone on a long journey because if they had been local residents, Joshua would have killed them all.
Excellent. Well done. So what's that got to do with Be'erot? Well, what it's got to do with Be'erot is that how did Joshua find out that he'd been duped? Let's have a look in chapter 9 of Yehoshua. And the children of Israel journeyed and came to their cities. This is after they've made the deal with Joshua, right? They've duped him. They've made a deal with him. And they came to their cities on the third day. And what had they pretended, as you quite rightly said, Michael, that they'd come from days and months away. Remember, they pretended to have come from a long, long way away because they had these old moldy pieces of bread and they had old water skins and they made out that they'd come from whoa. Actually, they'd only come 3 days. And the children of Israel journeyed and they came to their cities on the third day. And their cities were Givon, Hakfirah, Be'erot. So Be'erot was one of the Gibeonites' cities. Okay. Now, where is it? Well, you'll tell me it's in the territory of Binyamin. And I'll tell you, well, I don't think it necessarily is because it was counted, Techashev. It was counted as in Binyamin, right? But not necessarily is it in Binyamin's territory. I suppose it's a bit like, don't know, maybe I'm wrong about this. Any Americans on today? No? Okay. Alaska is part of the United States of America, but it's not in America, is it? It's sort of, you know, off to the side somewhere up on the top right-hand side.
Or Gibraltar.
Or Gibraltar, that's a better example. Yeah, that's a better example, Paul. Gibraltar, part of, anyone been to Gibraltar?
Yeah.
Wonderful place. I love it. You see, well, you did the last time I went was in 2006, so it's a little while ago. But in 2006, they still had policemen with white sleeves. Remember the old days where you had policemen with white sleeves when they were sort of, you know, making the traffic, and they'd have, you don't see that in England anymore. And they had Bobby's hats on as well. It was like stepping back into the UK, like from the 1950s. It was lovely. Yeah, so Gibraltar is not part of mainland Britain, but it is counted as part of Britain. The Falklands would have been another. Yeah, the Falklands would have been another example, wouldn't it? Why did I think of Alaska? Didn't think of those things. Anyway, I wonder whether this place, Be'erot, was not part of Binyamin. And in fact, if you look, the biblical scholars think that Be'erot is over here. See that? Right next to Ramallah.
In Binyamin.
Is that in Binyamin? I think it's on the border, Paul. Yeah. So the Mefarshim say, I think the Radak says, it was on the border, and a bit like where my family came from. My family came from a village called Rudikanen, and we always said that we were Romanishers, but actually it's right on the border of Romania and Moldova. And every 5 minutes it changed, you know, it was Romanian, it was Moldovan, it was something else. And I think this is right on the border of Binyamin. But anyway, that's where it is supposed to be. It's a place called Al-Bira. Not a place I think you should go and visit. Anybody been to Psagot, which is very close by?
Winery.
There is a winery there. Anybody been to that winery? I've been to that winery. I went to a wedding at that winery. I went to Rabbi Portnoy's son's wedding. I think it was Mendy's wedding, Mendy Portnoy. This was a few years ago. I do not have a very good sense of direction. That is an understatement. I have a dreadful sense of direction. So all I do is I follow what it says on Waze. And Waze took me all the way through here to get to Psagot. And for about 40 minutes, I did not see an Israeli number plate. And I was schwitzing in the car there, thinking, what if I break down here, if I have a puncture? I was absolutely schwitzing. The time I got to the wedding at Psagot, which is over here, and I'd gone through this very unfriendly area, I was a schmatter. I didn't enjoy the wedding. I left early and went back all the way through the long way around, not going back the same way. So if you go to Psagot, do not go through the Shtachim. It's a very nice place, the Psagot winery, but not a place to go to via Be'erot, which is now called Al-Bira. and it's right there next to Ramallah and close to
You were very lucky not to get lynched there, Johnny.
I know.
You can set your ways not to go into the Palestinian-controlled territories.
I know that now. I didn't know that then. I'm talking 10 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Now I know. I certainly wouldn't make the same mistake again, but it was not a pleasant feeling, I have to tell you. Anyway, we digress. So anyway, Be'erot belongs to the Gibeonites. We know that from Yoshua. There it is. It belongs to the Gibeonites. Now, why is Barbara's assumption that they were supporters of Shaul not correct? What was Shaul's relationship with the Gibeonites?
Not good.
Not good is correct. Would you like to expand on that, Hannah?
No.
Right. Well, I'll show you.
Why then would two of the company commanders be from people that didn't support Saul?
Very good question. Very good question. I was hoping somebody would ask that question. Well done, Michael. Let me ask you this question. When David was running away from Shaul, he went to a king called Achish. Remember? Who is he a king of?
The Philistines.
Philistines. What was David's relationship with the Philistines? In Hannah's words.
Not very good.
Not good.
Actually, it was ambivalent.
I don't think so. David had killed tens of thousands of them, remember?
Yeah, but he also tried to join them at one stage.
That's the point. That's the point. He'd killed 10,000 of them, but he still tried to join them. He tried to join them when they were fighting against Shaul. So in other words, David was a mercenary. And these two were mercenaries. This is quite common. Excuse me. This is quite common we see in Tanach. And in fact, the Koren, this lovely Koren Sefer, talks about it in quite detail, that these people were mercenaries. But it's a good question, Michael. So they were mercenaries. And this may well be a lesson that if you are a king, that you shouldn't take your mercenaries from people who are your natural enemies. But we haven't yet found out why Shaul and the Gibeonites have a not good relationship. Well, we will eventually get to it. It is mentioned in Malachim. Even though Shaul has been long dead, it's mentioned in Malachim Bet over here. We have just, this is the story of Naaman and Elisha. Anybody know the story of Naaman and Elisha? Yeah. Elisha was a bit of a miracle worker. Go on, Paul.
Well, Naaman had leprosy, and he was eventually persuaded to seek Elisha's cure.
Okay.
I think Elisha didn't send himself out; he sent somebody else out, didn't he?
So Elisha cured him, and then what happened was Naaman said this, verse 18. For this thing, well, that's not what I wanted to show you. No, that was Bet Rimon. Coming to that later. Here we go. This is what I wanted to show you. Wrong reference. Here's the reference. Shmuel Bet later on, chapter 21. We'll get to it before we get to Malachim Bet. Okay. This is in David's reign. Later on, there was a famine in the days of David for 3 years, and the king called the Gibeonites, and he said to them, now the Gibeonites were not the children of Israel, but the remnant of the Amorites. And the children of Israel had sworn to them. But Saul, nevertheless, sought to stay them in his zeal for the sake of the children of Israel and Judah. So what had happened was, Shaul had massacred the Gibeonites, despite the fact that Yehoshua, back in the day, had made a peace covenant with them. Yehoshua had said...
Aren't the Gibeonites considered to be the descendants of his name's, I can't get his name out. Moses' father-in-law.
Yitro. I knew you were going to say that.
Yitro.
Like the Druzim. The Druzim are said to be the descendants of Yitro. The Gibeonites, they may be, I don't know. But they
I
were.
was always taught that the Gibeonites were considered the descendants of Yitro.
Let's have a look. Gibeonites, descendants of Jethro. Let's have a look. See what Google says.
Jethro Tull.
Just showing your age there, Peter.
Jethro Tull, yeah.
No, it doesn't look like it. According to the biblical account, the Gibeonites ethnically belong to the Hivite population of Canaan. There you go. Anyway, Joshua had promised not to harm them because he'd done a peace covenant with them. And the people came to Joshua and said, they've duped us. And Joshua said, hard luck. We made a promise. We have to keep our promise. Shaul, on the other hand, did not keep that. And over there in chapter 21, we hear that Shaul had put them to death, a whole load of them. And in fact, the only way the famine went off, this famine, we'll see it eventually, is that David delivered 7 descendants of Shaul into the Gibeonites, and they were hanged. And that sort of put their mind at ease, as it were. So we know from this story, let's go back to our chapter. We know from this story that the Gibeonites and Shaul were not on good terms. So the question, whoever questions it was, Michael, I think it was, who said, what was he doing in appointing these 2 people, was a good question. But they were mercenaries. So Be'erot, we're told this was Be'erot, was counted to Benjamin. It was close to Benjamin's territory, maybe even in Benjamin's territory, but it was a Gibeonite city. Of that we know. Okay.
Then why does it have the sons of Benjamin?
Mibnei Binyamin, because they were the children of Rimmon, that was their father. Habeiroti, Mibnei Binyamin. What's wrong with that? Bnei Yisrael, Bnei Yehuda, Bnei Binyamin.
That means they're Benjaminites, they're not Gibeonites.
Well, that's right. That's why he's telling you, because when you read that, Mibnei Binyamin, you're going to say to me, wait a minute, they're Gibeonites, right?
And so
they're Benjaminites. And no, you're going to say to me, they're not sons of Benjamin, they are Gibeonites. And that's why the Tanach says in brackets, because Be'erot was counted as being part of Benjamin, even though they were really Gibeonites. That answers your question is the question that is answered by the last bit of that pasuk. Are you with me?
Also.
Yeah. Because otherwise, why do we need to know that this Be'erot is part of Binyamin, is counted as Binyamin? Only because you wouldn't think it was counted, because you know from Joshua that it's a Gibeonite city. If it's a Gibeonite city, it's not part of Benjamin. It's not Bnei Benjamin. So it's considered to be Benjamin. Now, I did show you.
The Kenites are the descendants of Yitro.
Okay, thank you. Kenites. Right, very good. So, let's have a look. This here, sons of Rimmon. Okay, now, why are we told they're the sons of Rimmon? Just, I suppose that's their name. Okay, that was their surname, Ben Rimmon. I started to show you this in error, but I'm going to show it you correctly now. Anybody been to Kibbutz Bet Rimmon? Either Aleph or Bet? Yes?
Our friends there at the
We've
moment.
driven past it.
Veronica's there now.
I know.
It's a very lovely place.
Live there.
It's a very lovely place up in the north. It is a kibbutz hadati. It's part of the religious kibbutz movement. I nearly went there in 1977, but instead, ironically, I went to Be'erot Yitzchak. which is a kibbutz next to Lod, very close to the airport, also part of Kibbutz Hadati. I had a choice of, well, no, I don't think I did have a choice. I mean, there were two choices, but I was given that choice, I was put to that one. Anyway, Bet Rimon is a very lovely Kibbutz Hadati. But what was Bet Rimon in Tanach? Not a very lovely Dati kibbutz. Go to the story of Naaman. Here, Naaman says, please forgive me. He's talking to Elisha now. When my master comes to Bet Rimon to prostrate himself there, and he leans on my hand, and I will prostrate myself in Bet Rimon. When I bow in Bet Rimon, may the Lord forgive your servant for this thing. So Naaman says, I should really abandon my current religion and join you lot because you've cured me and I can see what a wonderful God you have, etc. But you'll have to forgive me, he says, because I have to take my master to Bet Rimon. Bet Rimon was the temple of the idols of a particular bunch. I don't know who they were. But Bet Rimon, ironically, was an idol-worshipping temple. And he's asking for forgiveness from Naaman for when he goes there in the future, he's going to have to bow down because, that's part of his job kind of thing. And that was it. So that was Bet Rimon. Quite interesting that today's Bet Rimon is clearly not named after that Bet Rimon. It'd be interesting to know what today's Bet Rimon is named after. Let's have a look. Kibbutz Bet Rimon.
Maybe they grow pomegranates there.
They do indeed, maybe that is the reason. Let's have a look. Bet Rimon is literally the house of a pomegranate. It's the kibbutz located in the Lower Galilee region council. There's a core kibbutz. It is named after the biblical Rimon in the lands of the tribe of Zevulun, which is identified with Rumani at today's Arab village of Rumana, 2 kilometers to the west. Bet Rimon was first settled in 1977 as a Nachal settlement, affiliated with a religious kibbutz movement. Okay, so it's mentioned there from the biblical place of Rimon, not the Tanach version. Okay, that's interesting. All right, there we go. Let's go back to Shmuel Bet. So, and the Beerotites fled to Gittayim. Gittayim. Where's that? What does ayim mean at the end of something?
There's two of them.
Yeah.
Yes, correct. So, for example,
Gibeonites.
Givatayim, which means?
2 hills.
Correct. Any others?
No. Ramatayim? Is there such a place?
Denying.
Probably. Ramatayim is probably a place. Yeah, Einayim, yes. Another place that I went to, I think I've mentioned it in the past, a historical place, a Tanach place where I went to.
Machanaim.
Machanayim is one, yes, 2 camps. And Sha'arayim.
2 gates.
Sha'arayim, 2 gates. That was the place I went to. I went on a brilliant, I've been on a lot of brilliant Tanach Tiulim, but this was a particularly brilliant one, where they took us round basically the area of King David's stronghold, Sha'arayim being one of them. And you can see in this ruin of Sha'arayim, you can see very clearly where the 2 gates were. And it's very unusual to have 2 gates. Why was it unusual to have 2 gates?
One gate, because if you have more than one gate, the people attacking you could got more places to come into the city.
Yeah, because the gate's the weakest point. Gate's the weakest point of the city because the rest of the city is like 3 foot thick walls. So yeah, that's absolutely right. So no place had two gates except for this Sha'arayim place, which is why it was called Sha'arayim.
Wasn't there a place down towards Gaza that had 2 gates as well? Going back a little way, possibly.
Can't think of that right off the top of my head. You can do that for homework, Michael. Find out what you're talking about. So where's Gatayim then?
Samson.
Samson was messing around in Gaza. That's true.
Yeah, it was
So-
Samson. There was a city. I'm sure there was a city down there with 2 gates down
We'll
there.
have a look at Shoftim in a minute in the chapter of Samson. What about Gatayim? Where do you think that is? Two Gats, yeah?
Gat, yeah.
Kiryat Gat, yeah.
Kiryat Gat, probably. Gatayim is probably Gat. What kind of city was Gat? Kiryat Gat.
Fine.
Philistine city.
Correct. A Philistine city. And it was quite a big one, wasn't it? There were 5 major cities of the Philistines. Can you name all
The
5?
High Bridge was taken there.
Can you? Yes, it was correct. Can you name all 5? Gat is one.
Ashdod,
Ashdod,
Lachish,
Ashkelon,
Ashkelon,
Ekron,
Ekron,
and Lachish.
Flag.
Lachish. Well done.
Lachish.
Excellent. Excellent. Very good. Very good. Anyway, I think Gatayim is probably connected with Gat. It may well be that Gat was such a big place that it ended up being, like you've got in Ramat Bet Shemesh now. You've got Ramat Bet Shemesh, Aleph, Beit, Gimel, Dalad. Have you got Hay yet, Avril? Yeah, there's Hay as well in Ramat Bet Shemesh already. Yeah. So, you'll get the whole alphabet eventually because it just keeps on expanding. So I reckon Gat was started off smaller and became big. And when it says Gatayim, I think it means Gat. I think they ran off to Gat, which would make sense because Gat was a Philistine city. And if they are running away from Israel, they might well go to Israel's enemy, which is the Philistines. So now then, we have got to verse 4, and we are going to miss it out because it doesn't fit in here at all. Verse 3 should be followed by verse 5. We're going to come back to verse 4. We'll just say it, but we're not going to go and deal with it now. We've got to deal with the rest of the story first and come back to verse 4. Veli Yehonatan ben Shaul, and to Jonathan, the son of Shaul. Note that he is given his full name as opposed to his brother. Ben Necha Reglayim. Ben Neche Reglayim. He had a child who was Neche Reglayim. He had crippled feet. We have this word, don't we? You see it all over the place in modern Hebrew. Neche means disabled. Yeah, you don't ever park in a disabled spot, and you see those spots is for nechim, only for nechim, for disabled people. So he had this child. Jonathan had this lame child. Ben Chamesh Shanim Haya. He was 5 years old. Bavo Shmuat Shaul v'Yonatan mi'Israel. He was 5 years old when his father and grandfather were killed. Vatisaehu umanto. His carer, his nurse, carried him away. Vatanos, and she fled. Vayehi bechofzah. And it was when she was in a hurry, lanus, to run away, vayipol, and he fell, vayipaseach, and he became lame. Ushmo Boshet, and that was his name, Boshet. And it's told you here how he became lame. He got dropped by his nurse. Where have you had this word before? Bechofzah.
Chipazon.
Chipazon, where's that from, Peter?
Yeah, I can't remember.
Yes, you can.
Yetziat Mitzrayim.
Yes, it's the Mitzrayim. We are told, you read it yesterday in Parashat HaChodesh. That's where you heard it yesterday. I'm sure that Barbara heard it yesterday as well. In Parashat HaChodesh. We heard that you had to eat the Korban Pesach with your belt on, your stick in your hand, your shoes on your feet, and you had to eat it b'chipazon, in a hurry. Okay. Any of you do all that nonsense at the Seder night? We do. We all get at this particular point when we come to when we come to the bit where it is Pesach Matzah Moro, and we talk about the Korban Pesach, and we read those verses, everyone goes and dresses up. They put on their togas that they probably wore in those days, their jabaliyas, or whatever they call them. We all put our belt on. We all have a stick. We all have shoes on, and we all start running around the table in a circle, and we recreate the night of Seder, the night of Yetziat Mitzrayim, with our belts, our shoes, and our sticks in our hands. And we also have something over our back, a bundle over our back. So what do we have in our bundle?
Dough.
Dough, that's right. We don't really have dough because it would be chametz, but we pretend to have dough. So b'chipazon, we have it in, they left in a hurry. So we're not going to do this pasuk because it's completely out of position. What's it got to do with anything? Nothing. So we'll have to come back to it at a later date. We'll carry on next time, please God. We can still do next week. It's not Yom Tov, is it? It's 2 weeks' time is Yom Tov. So we can do next week, please God. We'll carry on at verse 5 to hear what these two generals, Rechav and Ba'ana, went and did to Ishboshet. I'm afraid Michael's already spoilt it for you, but if you don't want to know how Ishboshet meets his end, then don't read on. Any questions or comments? No? Jolly good. Shavua Tov, Chodesh Tov. See you all soon. Thank you very much. Feel better already.
Shavua Tov. Thank you.
Thank you, Johnny. Tag is told.
Bye.